All right, well, good morning. My name is Jeff Ray. I'm the President and CEO of the South Bend Regional Chamber of Commerce. I want to welcome you to today's Indiana Vision 2025 session, a plan for Hoosier prosperity. We're thrilled that you have joined us today. We have teamed up with the Indiana Chamber, one of our great partners that we work with throughout the year, to bring you this little North Central Indiana Regional Forum today. And many of you who have been around for a few years are familiar with this. We've had the Indiana Chamber up several times since the Vision 2025 plan started to give these updates, both kind of how we're doing as a state and then also a look into North Central Indiana and how we're doing. So we're thrilled that to have the chance, and you're going to hear more in a second as we get into our program. So we're thrilled that to have that chance to partner. We think we have a terrific program. In addition to the updates, we're going to have a chance to sit with two of our state senators here near the end of our conversation for some conversation about the State House and how the activity there is tying into things like Vision 2025. The Indiana Chamber is currently doing these around the state, and we're thrilled that they have carved some time out to come to Northern Indiana. We wish they were in person. Obviously, this has been a weird year to plan events and such. We appreciate our members sticking with us and participating in events virtually, and we think this allows us to reach a great audience this way. And so we're thrilled that so many of you have joined us today for this program. So we're going to get into this briefly. Obviously, there are a number of great partners that have, and I'll let the Indiana Chamber speak more to that, but one of them that's certainly a familiar face here locally is the Garitoni Smith Family Foundation. And Larry Garitoni is joining us today. The Garitoni Smith Foundation is one of the big supporters of the Vision 2025 plan and has been a terrific part of this. So Larry, I'm going to turn over to you for some opening and introductory remarks before we get into our programming today.
Jeff, thank you very much. I'm delighted to be a part of the panel. I'm addressing the 2025 plus vision. I'm very supportive of that, and I've got a couple prepared remarks, so I kind of lead into those. All of us on the Zoom call have done strategic planning. We know strategic planning is necessary so that we can get above the noise of day-to-day operations and identify the weaknesses and strengths of our organization and capitalize on the opportunities that we have. But who does this for our state? I have a great deal of confidence and respect for the leadership of our state. They've been very busy responding to short-term issues and emergencies, especially COVID. Our state certainly needs strategic planning as much as any for-profit or not-for-profit corporation. Fortunately, we have the best state chamber of commerce in the country. Our state chamber of commerce is second largest and certainly is the best in the country with the leadership that's shown throughout the years. In Indiana, in 2000, Indiana was one of the lowest ranking states by many competitive business and quality of life indicators. We really were not doing well at all. The state lacked a coordinated long-term strategy. The chamber provided that strategy and led the way with the development of Economic Vision 2010, and then Indiana Vision 2025, and now Indiana Vision 2025 plus. Indiana is now the leader in the Midwest and one of the leaders in our country for a great business climate, and our economic growth shows this. However, as we recover from the tremendous negative impact of COVID, we must not go back to business as usual. We must rethink what we're doing and become much better than we were. Vision 2025 Plus will lead the way in doing this. I've been a state chamber member for several years and have admired the membership on many issues. I certainly support the development of Indiana Vision 2025 Plus and hope that everyone here will also. Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate the opportunity to make some comments.
Great, Larry. Thank you. And thank you for your support of this important initiative. I too, like you, Larry, agree. This is one of the best planning efforts that we've seen. And in fact, what I think excited me most is the metrics associated with it and the chance each year to sort of track our progress and design strategy. And it's not a plan sitting on a shelf somewhere. It's a very active and living document. And we appreciate that. No, it couldn't happen without great partners like you helping make it happen. So thank you, Larry. Just before I turn over to Kevin, I just want to make just sort of a quick intro, if you will, just, kind of give those that are participating a lay of the land of what's going to happen over the next hour plus. So Kevin Brinegar, the president and CEO of the Indiana Chamber, will give some remarks and really share the report card with you. Adam Berry, the vice president of economic development and technology policy, from the chamber is going to then really work on some regional metrics and some employer initiatives that are helping us achieve that. And then, as I mentioned, we're going to have two familiar faces join us, State Senator Ryan Mishler and State Senator David Nizgodsky, two business owners, but also state legislators who are on the policy side helping enact Indiana policy that helps us advance on many of these key initiatives. And so we'll have just kind of a roundtable discussion here near the end. So that's sort of the lay of the land of what's going to happen soon. So without further ado, I'm going to turn over to Kevin Brinegar. Again, somebody that doesn't need an introduction, a great partner for us here in Northern Indiana, a great champion for business in all corners of Indiana. Kevin Brinegar is the president and CEO of the Indiana Chamber. Kevin, the program is all yours.
Jeff, thank you very much, and welcome everyone. Thank you for taking time and to have the interest in viewing our Indiana Vision 2025 report card. I certainly want to thank the two senators for joining us as well, and would particularly call out Senator Mishler, who chairs the Senate Appropriations Committee, and had a lot of work to do in that last week of the session as we had $3 billion of federal money land in our laps from the American Relief Plan. And then we had a revenue forecast update like I've never seen before. And I served on that revenue forecast committee for 20 years earlier in my career. And Ryan, I can't recall an adjustment from December to April that added $2.4 billion to the projected revenue for the upcoming biennium. And from our perspective, I want to say, both senators, that we think that the General Assembly in a very short time period there made some really wise, impactful investments for Indiana's future that will help move the needle on some of the metrics that we're going to present today and really position Indiana to be a leader coming out of this pandemic. So I want to thank you for those thoughtful decisions and investments that were made in what turned out to be a very, very short time frame. I know that weekend before the end of session must have been very, very frantic. So I'm going to share my screen. Jeff, tell me if you can see that.
Yep, I sure can, Kevin.
Okay. We'll go into presentation mode. And we appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with our friends in North Central Indiana, and Jeff and the other chamber executives from this part of the state are indeed great partners. We also want to thank our sponsors shown here on this slide, and includes Larry Garatoni, who gave those very kind opening remarks. We appreciate that very, very much. I got Adam's name up here, and you're going to hear from Adam in just a little bit as he presents the regional metrics. But Adam Berry was the point person on preparing this year's Indiana Vision 2025 report card. He worked with our researcher and put the report card together. And that's important to us because when we produced and first rolled out Indiana Vision 2025 and its 37 goals for Indiana's future, we did not want this to be a plan that just had a one-day media splash and then went up on the shelf. And so every other year in the non-election year, we produce this report card that has some, Adam, 65, 67
70
metrics that tie to the goals of Indiana Vision 2025. And what you'll see is we'll be presenting data that looks at our progress on these metrics over time as the state of Indiana looks at our ranking on those metrics relative to other states, and looks at where are we relative to the US average of the 50 states as well. And one of the questions that has come up already is, okay, this is labeled our 2021 report card. How did COVID affect that? And won't that mess up your data and your metrics? In reality, the data that's in this report card is predominantly from 2019, because there's a time lag between the time metrics can occur and be gathered and put together and reported. And it tends to be about a 2-year time lag. So we'll have to deal with that question when we do our 2023 report card. But the pandemic and COVID-19 really do not come into play with respect to this report card. We're really comparing metrics from 2019 to the prior report card, which contained metrics from 2017. Here are some questions to ponder as far as what matters most. Is Indiana's current raw score versus the current national average, Indiana's current raw score versus our raw metric score in the previous years, or how Indiana ranks versus the other 49 states. As I think about it, I would argue that B and C are perhaps most important relative to A, but I think those are all important questions to think about as we go through this data. Overall report card rankings, and again, this is relative to other states. In this new report card, our rankings improved in 22 of the metrics, but they declined in 26 of the metrics. 8 of them, they remained unchanged. This is comparable, but not quite as good as the 2019 report card. And then there were 14 metrics where there was no new data available, or in some cases, we added new metrics that better measured our progress relative to the goal. And so there isn't a history of information that we have to compare. Our top rankings in this 2021 report card, second in with respect to public pension, and in that budget that Senator Mitchler was involved in crafting, there is, I believe, a $500 million one-time investment to shore up unfunded liabilities in our public pension fund. That's a huge infusion that will reduce the pay-as-you-go payments that the state will have to make in the future, which will then free up money to be invested elsewhere. In local government spending, we're 6. These are all top 10 rankings. Employment and U.S. affiliates. These are employees of foreign-owned companies that are located here in Indiana. We have a strong relationship with Japan and other countries, which helps diversify our employment base. NAEP scores, that stands for the National Assessment of Education Progress. That's given in the 4th grade and the 8th grade for math, language arts, and science. It is worth emphasizing that the NAEP test does not test every student in your state. It is just a small sample of students and then compares those results over time and relative to other states. Exports as a percentage of GDP, exports per capita, all in the top 10. And the one where we made really strong improvement was reading gap. And what that is the difference in the average score between what we think of as disadvantaged students, which in this case is measured by those on free and reduced lunch, versus students that are not on free and reduced lunch. We were previously ranked 17th in the prior report card. We've moved up to 10th. So we've closed that learning gap between the disadvantaged students and those that are not. The areas where we dropped in the rankings, you can see those. Some of these I think are what I would consider sort of insignificant, and some more so. The net job creation for firms 6 years and older, that number appears to be, or that ranking appears to bounce around a bit. We were 14th in 2015. We were as high as 5th in our more mature firms in 2019, and now we've dropped back to the middle of the pack. And then the other big drop was in the reading gap in 4th grade. We went from 8th to 29th. So while we improved in one area with respect to the reading gap, or respect to the gap between free and reduced lunch students and others, we declined in this one. You can see the other drops in rankings here as well. The metrics where we're in the bottom 10 states, and unfortunately there's quite a few. Bachelor's degrees, our smoking rate, the Chamber's been talking about that for some time. We actually improved, but we're still in the bottom 10. Associate's degrees, and that gets to our post-secondary achievement of our workforce. We've made great strides in that area. When we first rolled out the Vision 2025 plan, we were at 33% of Hoosiers had some sort of post-secondary degree or credential. That's now up to, as we'll see later, over 48%. So that's great progress, but we still rank in the bottom third of the states. And there are actually some states that have over 50% of their adult population that has a degree or credential. And I would submit to you all that that education achievement impacts our rankings in some of the other metrics. For example, people who smoke tend to be less educated. And so that contributes to a higher smoking rate. People that are less educated have less per capita personal income. And so our ranking there, which is declining, is impacted as well. And folks who do not have more than a high school education or even a high school diploma tend not to be entrepreneurs. And so you can see many of these things are interconnected, at least from our perspective, in this report card. And the adult workforce having post-secondary degree credentials has made great improvement, but we still have a long way to go in order to sort of maximize our state's economic potential. You see healthcare costs, that particularly has to do with hospital costs. Our population with science and engineering degrees has dropped a bit. Our entrepreneur index has improved, but is still in the bottom 10. And you can see the other ones there as well. Report card raw score changes. This is not our rank, but our actual performance on the metric. We've improved from 2 years prior in 31 of the metrics. So roughly half of the metrics our metric has improved, but we declined again in about 20. 3 remained unchanged, and then 16 there was not a data available to make a comparison. We go through the drivers now. There are 4 drivers in Indiana Vision 2025: outstanding talent, attractive business climate, superior infrastructure, and dynamic and creative culture. There are 9 goals within the outstanding talent driver, which arguably is the most important of the 4. And there you can see that, I'll minimize this so I can see my screen better. We outperformed the US average in 13, underperformed in 10. We've made strong progress on 5 goals within this driver area, but work to do on others as I've just described. Compared to our 2019 rankings, we improved in 4 metrics, but we declined in 10. That's disturbing. And then in 2019, scores improved 12, declined in 5. And outstanding talent, we talk about NAEP scores, and I mentioned that this is a sample. So the changes here could be that we have fallen off or that other states are getting better, but it could be just a different sample. So it's a little hard to determine why our rankings changed, although in most cases they didn't change all that much. Graduation rates. I'm always a bit skeptical about graduation rates because different states do things differently, but certainly we want to be moving in the upward direction, and these rankings show that we are higher than the national average at 87.2%, and have made considerable progress from 2019 to 2021 report cards, going from 30th to a tie for 20th, and an increase of about a little more than 3 points. Post-secondary completion is an area where we still have comparatively low rankings. But again, as noted, we've made considerable progress. All staying in the outstanding talent area, we perennially rank in the top 15 states in conferring STEM degrees. And I would say think Purdue, IU, Rose-Hulman, and are one of the top states in having people get degrees from our institutions of higher education. But the percentage of our population that possesses those degrees still ranks near the bottom, and that means that we have a lot of foreign students who come here and get a great education in STEM, but then take those degrees with them. So we have a challenge in lifting up Hoosiers to obtain those degrees and trying to capture and keep the folks that come in from out of state and have them continue to stay and work here after graduation. In the outstanding talent area, an ongoing concern is there's been about a 20 or 30-year drop in our rank in per capita personal income. And you see we're down the bottom 10 on per capita personal income. On household income, a little bit better. Several years ago, we were only reporting that metric. And I said, that really doesn't tell the whole story, because it is a lot less expensive to live in Indiana than it is in other places like New York or Boston or San Francisco. So we started looking at adjusting the per capita personal income for the cost of living. And those are the numbers on the bottom. And it paints a much better picture. We ranked 24th when you adjust for our lower cost of living. So that puts us in about the middle and actually the upper half. And on household income, similarly, we dropped from we improved from 37th to 23rd. So that's a bit more encouraging and really tells a better, clearer picture, I believe. Going to driver number 2, attractive business climate. If we compare the current report card to the prior one, again, there are 10 goals and 14 metrics that relate to those goals. We improved in 7, which is encouraging, only declined in 4. And several of the goals in this driver, such as repeal the inheritance tax, become a right to work state, are what I think of as more binary goals. We have achieved 4 of the goals in this and made considerable progress towards 6, but still some work remaining to do in the remaining 4. Local units of government. This is an interesting comparison. Indiana has 2,639 units of local government. You see the numbers from some other comparative states. The chamber continues to maintain that Indiana has too many units of local government, and that many of the services that are provided could be consolidated into like things that the townships do, could be done at the county level, et cetera. But that's illustrative of how we compare to some other states. Our health rankings continue to be very poor. Excuse me, these are healthy rankings, not health rankings. These are some of the positives: public pension, state and local spending, state level regulation restrictions, and small business policy index. Our unhealthy rankings tend to be in the health area. Health insurance premiums, we're now 31st. The RAND study on hospital costs found that on average we're 303% more than what Medicare pays for the same services, and all the states are higher than Medicare because of the purchasing power of the federal government, but we are considerably higher. Our obesity rate, we now rank 39th. We're 10% higher than the national average. You can't see it because our logo's slapped on top of it. But again, we're 40th. We've been between 40th and 44th on our smoking rate. This is 18% higher. I know in the last report card, we were actually 50% higher than the national average. And the cartoon that Adams put in this presentation kind of sums it up in terms of, it ought to be easy to explain and understand why our health insurance is so high, but some folks don't see can make the connection. Driver number 3, superior infrastructure. Our raw scores improved in 3 of the metrics. They declined in 3 more. We've made considerable progress, and one of the things that is just starting to show up in these metrics is the significant investment that has been made through legislation the General Assembly passed in 2017 on our transportation infrastructure. We have good news in the broadband area as well. Let me get to that. First, electricity prices. Our rank has gone down precipitously since the turn of the century, as our prices have gone up faster than have other states. But the energy study that the Chamber Foundation produced provides some strong explanations for this. Utilities in Indiana have made more investments to convert to cleaner fuels, to renewables, and to meet EPA regulations, and have done so at a faster rate than other states. That has meant that our prices have gone up faster than other states, but our energy study says that this will level off in the coming decade as other states are required and by necessity make the investments that utilities in Indiana have already made. So we look forward to the next report card, and we think that our ranking will begin to improve over the next decade or so. Broadband, we see improvement in our rankings with respect to both access and speed, and that's the speeds are defined by the federal government. And lastly, driver number 4, dynamic and creative culture. We have outperformed U.S. averages in 6 of the metrics, but underperformed in 10. And our raw scores have improved in 9 of the metrics, but they've declined in 8. We'd like to see more of those in the improved category and less in the declined, certainly. Net job creation by firms 6 years and older. Actually, in the 2019 report card, which had 2017 data, we were actually 5th highest in the country. We've seen a bit of a drop. That's concerning, but perhaps even more so is our rank in new entrepreneurs, new business startups continues to rank in the bottom 10 of the country. Net job creations for firms under 5 years. This is where our future lies, and because older companies tend to reach a plateau in terms of their employment levels, whereas it's the newer firms that tend to continue to grow if they're successful. And we're not creating new firms and jobs within those firms as rapidly as is occurring in other states. And I believe that part of that ties back to our comparatively lower levels of post-secondary degree completion. In the dynamic and creative culture with respect to venture capital, we've seen improvement in the per worker investment in venture capital. And again, we thank the General Assembly for the enhancements in the venture capital tax credit. In recent sessions, that credit has been made transferable. In this session, the annual cap was bumped up considerably, as was the percentage of the credit. And then there's an even higher percentage for women and minority-owned businesses. We thank the members of the General Assembly for that. We think that that will lead to more investment in Indiana companies in venture capital. We still trail the U.S. median by quite a bit. So in fact, we're about at the halfway point there. And so more work to be done there to attract more investment to business startups in Indiana. Our employment in majority-owned U.S. affiliates, as I indicated before, these are foreign-owned companies that have operations here in the state of Indiana. We continue to rank in the top 10 in that area, and I think that helps with our diversity and both in the workforce and our cultural diversity as well. The takeaways, an outstanding talent. You can see the strengths And the listed opportunities, certainly per capita personal income, early education metrics stand out there. In attractive business climate, many of our goals there have been accomplished, and we have, as designated by CEO Magazine and others, one of the top 10 business climates in the country. We also cracked the top 10 this year in our business tax climate as measured by the Tax Foundation. Our areas of deep concern include our healthcare costs and the unhealthiness of our citizenry. And our legal environment is ranked low, although we have to, you see the asterisks there, that's based on a survey of general counsels of companies around the country. So there really isn't an objective metric that we can use there. So that one we have to take with a bit of a grain of salt. Superior infrastructure, broadband is expanding rapidly and will do even more so with the actions of the General Assembly initiative budget and the enhancements and the infusions coming from the federal government, as well the investments in our roads and bridges. You can't drive anywhere in Indiana without seeing improvements, construction, expansion, finishing I-69 all the way to Indianapolis, et cetera. That comes from that important legislation passed in 2017. And then we need to monitor how our energy prices compare in the coming decade and what happens there versus other states. Dynamic and creative culture, strengths, improving in venture capital, our international relations, our in-migration. We've had a net in-migration increase in state population each of the last 3 years. We anticipate that the significant investment that the General Assembly made in the READY grants and for quality of place will only continue to further that and make all of the regions of Indiana more attractive for folks to come, work, live, and play. Our opportunities, job growth in the older firms, and promoting and growing younger firms and workforce in those firms. I will stop there and turn it over to my colleague, Adam Berry, and let him share some regional metrics and show you how North Central Indiana compares to other regions of the state. Adam?
Adam, can I interrupt for just a quick second and just to remind our folks that are participating that we will take your questions. So remember, in the webinar, there's a Q&A feed. We're going to have some question and answers a little bit later. So if Kevin has said things that have piqued your interest, or as Adam does now, feel free to put those in the Q&A. I also am developing a list here that I'll fire to our panelists as well too, but I just want to make sure that you know this was intended to be interactive and your input's important as well. So Adam, it's all yours.
Great. Just get things situated here. Everything look okay on the
we can
share
see
slide?
it.
Yep, sure does.
Okay, great. Yeah, so as Kevin mentioned, my name is Adam Berry, and I've been with the Chamber for a little over 2 years now. And in addition to working with the wonderful members of our General Assembly, I also work on the Indiana Vision 2025 plan and specifically the report cards. And just as a quick anecdotal side note, both of the senators on the call probably remember my time working in Governor Pence's office. And just to show sort of the value of Indiana Vision 2025 on Governor Pence's campaign and then in his office, we used Vision 2025 both as a campaign, sort of putting together a campaign agenda as well as the governing agenda. So that's sort of the value that the document has and sort of the power of the playbook, if you will. So as Kevin mentioned, I'm going to be going through some of the regional metrics. Now, we're really only able to extrapolate 11 metrics at the regional level, just given the nature of the data sets. But the way that we sort of divided up the regions is we used the Department of Workforce Development, sort of the workforce regions. And this is Region 2, which captures the 5 counties listed here: Elkhart, Fulton, Kosciuszko, Marshall, and St. Joseph. So looking closely at the metrics that we were able to pull out, You'll see here that, oh, and just as we go through this, where the number is highlighted in green, that means that the region's progress outpaced the state's progress. So that's sort of the relative, and where it's red, you'll see that the region sort of underperformed the state as a whole. So here, with the high school graduation rate, the region's high school graduate increased by 9.8% compared to the state's 4.1%. And the one thing that's really important too that sort of Kevin couldn't go through everything, but I think it's really important to point out that our high school graduates are really much more ready for college than they have been in the recent past. Only 1% of our high school graduates required remediation in both reading and math. Compare this to 11% a decade ago. And 44% of our high school graduates had at least a 3.0 GPA, which is the highest portion in the last 5 years. So great progress there, and especially in your region. Associate's degrees, you'll see here, the region made progress at a rate of 3.3% compared to the state remaining flat. Bachelor's degrees, again, the region outperformed the state's progress, improving by almost 3.5% compared to the state's 1% improvement. Science and engineering degrees, I think this is something, while the progress might not look huge, that is over a 7% increase in the region, whereas the state remained flat. So I think that is, as Kevin mentioned, talking about the STEM metrics and the need to improve the portion of Hoosiers who have a STEM degree and who hold STEM related jobs. This is something that the region should really hang its hat on, is seeing progress in this area. Now, the portion of the population that has less than a high school diploma, the region remained flat, whereas the state reduced that number. So here, reducing the overall raw score is what you want to see. Poverty rate, again, going down is what you want to see. And the region certainly has fewer of its residents who are living in poverty, which is great, but as indicated by the red number, we would like to see that portion improve more going forward. Per capita income, again, same type of scenario here where the region's per capita income is improving, which is really what we want to see. We just would like to see more high-paying jobs for the residents in your community, which goes back to what Kevin was mentioning about improving, continuing to see the progress in post-secondary degrees and credentials. Adult smoking rate, sort of a little facts, I guess, behind the number here. It's great that you see the state's ranking dip below 20%, but what that metric does not include, it doesn't include smokeless tobacco, and it also doesn't capture the portion of the population who are vaping. So this is just cigarette smoking. So yes, it's great that the state's overall portion of the smoking population decreased, but we still know that there's work that needs to be done here. And then the region's, the region increased increased the portion who are smoking cigarettes. Here is, Indiana is the 10th fattest state, and why you didn't see the obesity rate in the bottom 10 ranking is because only 47 states were, 47 states were available for inclusion. But we really do rank in the bottom 10 states that were measured in terms of our obesity rate, which, as Kevin mentioned, there's implications across the board for our poor health. Drug deaths, unfortunately, we saw the drug deaths per 100%, or excuse me, 100,000 people within the region. We saw a tick up here in your region, whereas the state declined overall. And then finally, net domestic migration. So I mean, unfortunately, besides Marion County, which is Indiana Region 12, the North Central region saw the highest portion of out-migration out of its region, which, you know, I love North Central Indiana. I don't get up to North Central Indiana as much as I would love to, but you guys have a lot going for you, and it's really just a wonderful place to live. And so I think it's just a matter of looking at what the strengths are in that region, in your region, and taking advantage of the READY grants and just improving quality of place and marketing your region, letting folks not just in Indiana but outside of Indiana know what North Central Indiana has to offer. And I think your region is really poised for success over the long term. So I'll wrap up. Just looking globally, it's really difficult to compare regions to each other in the state. I mean, there's certainly all parts of the state, you know, rely on advanced manufacturing, but each region has its own set of strengths as well as challenges. But globally, if you just compare the region to itself, what we saw, big picture, was improvements in your human capital and income, education, credentials, per capita income, declines in smoking and obesity and drug deaths. And then where people are moving into and out of really varies by county. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, I want to thank our sponsors. I want to thank the senators who are taking their time today to answer your all's questions as well, and our sponsors and the investment into this initiative. Larry, thank you for your kind words. And at this point, I'll turn it over to Jeff. If we have time for Q&A, I think Kevin and I are happy to take those. If not, we'll move on to the panel discussion. Thank you all for joining us today, and feel free to reach out anytime with questions.
Great, thank you, Adam. Appreciate that. And maybe if you'll stop the screen share, and we'll get back to our panel on the screen there, and so that would be great. Thank you all for for kind of weighing in, and we're going to get into some discussion now. Reminder: shoot your questions our way if you'd like to include some. And I'm going to throw a couple out there to get started. You know, so I remember report card time and the nervousness of when the report card first came out, and then others actually taking a look at it and sort of weighing in on it. So Senator Zgodski, I'm going to put you on the spot first, and you won the random luck of the draw here. But so you've had a chance to see this and now hear a little bit more about it from Kevin and Adam. Anything jump out at you as that maybe excited you or left you worried a little bit? What are your initial observations after hearing a little bit about the report card update?
Thanks, Jeff. I appreciate it, because I just did send you a note also. I'm going to probably have to drop off about 12:30. But, I saw some good news there, and obviously we see some things that we can probably work on to do better. But I think that we've already begun some of that progress. Maybe it just hasn't begun to show in the ways we really want to see it. But I mean, with what we did with the regional cities dollars, I mean, it was just spectacular. And now with the READY grants, the opportunity, I feel very, very positive that we're going to win approval of some of those additional grants. And just with what we did last session here with the innkeeper's tax, now having the compact with the Pokagon Band of Potawatomi, and the professional sports development convention area tax, that we're going to continue to hold those dollars here to enhance the stadium and other improvements. I just think there's a lot we've got going for us. You know, we did great in the budget with education this year for all sides of private and public schools. So, I mean, I look forward to a lot of good things. I think, Adam, you said it very, very well, that we've got a great host of things going for us. We just kind of put those in action right now and continue with our marketing. And I think we're going to be on the path to good success.
Great, thank you, Senator. We'll come back to you for others. Senator Mishra, I'm going to come your way to sort of build on what Senator Nisgodsky said. So, my guess is, as a state legislator, you both sort of pay close attention to how Indiana stacks up with other states, and you're kind of constantly thinking about ways in which you can improve. Any initial observations from you after seeing the current report card update?
Well, Jeff, I always look at it first from a business perspective, and probably David too. I mean, we're businessmen first, and before legislators. And I'm in multiple states, so I'm always comparing to other states. And so, two things that would jump out to me as I compare to mainly Michigan and Indiana is my biggest concern is our healthcare costs. And this is something that Al Hubbard has worked a lot on. And I've talked to him quite often about that. That's really tough for small businesses to compete when the cost of insurance is so high compared to other states. So that is one thing that I think people underestimate that companies look at when they come to Indiana or want to come to Indiana is our health costs, our healthcare costs. The premiums are very high, and that's very important, and we don't really talk about that enough. The other thing I would mention is the energy costs. Now I'm not seeing that as much as what they mentioned in the report card. In Indiana, my energy costs don't seem to be growing or increasing as much, but Michigan, they've gone up probably 30%. So again, when Kevin's doing the report saying, well, Indiana's seeing this increase in energy costs, I'm actually seeing it more in Michigan than I am Indiana. So from that perspective, I'm more concerned about what's happening in Michigan and Indiana. I'm not seeing the effect. As a business owner, I'm not seeing that yet. But it's something that we have to look at because, again, companies look at the cost to do business, and energy is one of them. And I think one thing to look at is, first of all, I want to commend the chamber for doing this because the legislature is geared on 2-year cycles, and they're not trained to think beyond 2 years. And it's nice to see the chamber looking out further than 2 years, because as we know in business, we plan further out than 2 years, but government just plans around that 2-year budget. And so I like looking further down the road and where do we need to be, where are we heading? And I think we've created a very positive environment in Indiana. As far as a state unit, we've done all these investments, we've kept our debt down. Kevin mentioned the pension plan. You talk about Illinois, you hear about their pension plans. That's all you hear about. Well, I'll give you a number. So when I first started, our pension liability was just over 17 billion. Today, it's down to 6.5 billion. That's 17 years I've been there. And so I think as a fiscal conservative, that's a number I look at to say, Indiana is very good about looking at their overhead and controlling their debt, their long-term liabilities. So those are, I think, important things people will look at. And one thing I'd say too is we can create a positive environment from a fiscal standpoint, but there's certain things we can't control. So like we talk about young people, entrepreneurs, and we do everything we can to try to attract those folks and from a fiscal standpoint. But there's one thing we can't control that we lose out to, and I'll be honest, it's climate. A lot of these young people want to go to warmer areas. My own son, he loves it here, but he's like, we went down and visited the U in Miami because he's like, Dad, I just think I want to go someplace warm. And so there are certain factors that do play in that we can't control, but you take those factors off the table. I can't think of anything that we could have done differently as a state. Our last budget, Kevin mentioned the 2.4 billion excess. It was tough for me. I'm a cutter by trade, not a spender, and to tell me I have 2.4 billion more to spend was not comfortable. But then after the May forecast, being another 500 million ahead of the forecast, or the revenue forecast just came in, I'm like, why do we apologize for that? We should be saying, we're all like, oh my gosh, we're 500 over again. We should be proud, and we shouldn't be apologizing for that. Indiana's in great shape, and it's decisions that have been made over the last decade that have gotten us here. So while there's some areas that show need for improvement, overall, I think it's positive. And I'll jump to the region. And again, I'll speak for myself. Jeff, 6-7 years ago, I as a business owner would not have invested in St. Joe County. I'm just going to be totally honest. But I did in 2015 because I've seen where this region is going, and the improvements that leadership like yourself and Tim and the people at the chamber, the work you've done, you're creating a positive experience for our regional area. And I just invested again this last month in St. Joe County. So I'm seeing a huge difference in our region. And I see a difference in how people talk about our region. Before it was like, now it's like they're really interested to see what we're doing in our region. So again, that has to go to Jeff and his team. And I'm just proud to be a part of it with you guys. And you've been a good partner. And the numbers look good. We still have work to do, and we're going to keep working on it.
Great. Thank you, Senator. Appreciate your kind remarks and your thoughts there. And I'll come back to you. Senator Skotsky, I want to grab you again. Quick. So, several of the metrics that Adam and Kevin talked about related to education. And so obviously education has been a big priority, the development of talent for the workforce. As an employer, you certainly are looking for that talent, to fill your workforce. Talk a little bit, and then I'll go back to Senator Mishler as well. Talk a little bit about, kind of some of the things the General Assembly is doing in the education space that'll help us improve on those metrics that Kevin and Adam reported on.
Well, I mean, for the last several years, I know that, public schools have been asking for more dollars, and we, in this last budget, have received a lot more dollars. I also know that there's been a lot of movement with the private and charter schools with the vouchers, and it's not something that I still believe wholeheartedly in, but at the same time, I also see some of the good it's doing. So, what I tend to measure now is what I see within my own community, what I see with some of the schools that have truly benefited from these dollars. So I can't argue that in the same way that I used to. I actually see that the bottom line is, what are we going to do for our kids, and how do we best serve our children going into our future, and how are we building that? In South Bend schools, they received, the vote for the referendum, and they have those referendum dollars. That shows that our community does believe in our system. I do believe we still have a lot of work to do there, but I think we're certainly moving in the right direction. So, I think that some of the numbers you see with the higher education, I think we've got to, we can do better. And I think we're going to start seeing that. It's just, our community is growing in a way that we're investing in our community. That's the most important thing. And I think that's going to pay off. You go downtown South Bend and you see how that's come just in the last, oh my gosh, 5 years. It's just remarkable. And all of that is going to pay very huge dividends. So, that's all going to be how people invest in the education within their community, and how the people take part. We're investing better in broadband. That was a huge problem. So I think that you're going to see that begin to pay off too. I'm counting on it. We're going to have to do some more serious strides if that doesn't take place. But I really think that we're going to start to see some good changes here coming in the near future.
Great. Thank you, Senator. And thanks for what you're doing here locally as well. Appreciate your business participating with us in our Building Trades Week, for example, as a way to help continue to develop talent. Obviously, Kevin mentioned that one of the most important drivers being the talent side. Senator Mishler, I want to come back to you because as you were putting the budget together this year, as Senator Skotsky mentioned, there's been a lot of priority on the K-12 side of things. Can you talk a little bit about just sort of the effort in this year's budget, for example, to sort of shore up the development of talent through both, K-12 and other programs?
Well, first of all, I got to give Mr. Garatoni a lot of credit on the education side. He's always at my heels and very passionate about what he's doing. Not always happy with some of my decisions, but he's always there and always giving his side. And I don't know if I've ever met someone as passionate about an issue as Mr. Garatoni. So first, I have to give him a lot of credit for his passion in K-12 because it gets our attention. Second of all, I would say the biggest difference from when I started to today in education is when I first started, all we talked about is getting kids prepared for college. And if a student didn't want to go to college, it's almost like they were pushed aside and there was nothing for them. Where I think today we've really focused on the trades. And then I know David's worked with us a lot on this with his early on when former Senator Eckerty and myself and Senator Niskoski put a lot of time into the career and technical education piece, which with the pathways now, if a student doesn't want to go to college, it's not like push them aside. It's like, okay, now we have this path and we can go into the trades. And it makes it more interesting for kids that maybe don't have an interest in the math and the science, but have an interest in a skill. And so I think that's been a huge difference in my tenure in the Senate. One thing when we put the budget together, at least for myself, the goal is always to be at 50%. Indiana, I think there's only 2 or 3 states that give a larger percentage of their overall budget to K-12. And so 50% has always been my target. Is we want education to be half our budget. It has been. We try to continue down that path. It's always been a priority. You know, this year it was really focused on the entire package. You know, it's always been public schools versus charter schools versus choice schools. This year, I think my comment was, does it matter what the other person gets if you get what you want? And so public schools were getting the full 600 million from their report. You know, I think I went as far as 90,000 income on the choice. They wanted 145. The money was there. We did it. The charter folks wanted to increase their grant for charters. We did that. So as far as education goes, I think this is the first year everybody got what they asked for. And so I guess no matter how you slice the pie, everybody won. And that's very unusual. And I look in our area, how they work together. I'll just speak as a parent. I'm very happy with the education my child's received. Public education through grade 8 at Penn, you know, Dr. Thacker, you know, one of the best superintendents in the state of Indiana. Made some other choices for high school. Nothing to do with Penn, just saw another opportunity more toward what he was interested in. And so I think our area, we have a lot of good options for education. And I think kids are starting to take advantage of that. I was a little out on the choice program years ago. I kind of fought against it a little bit. I still have some reservations in some areas, but now I've actually I've met families and my son goes to school with kids that are actually benefiting. And I can see now where it took a kid from a real bad situation and put him in a better situation. And having the opportunity to visit with these parents and these kids has really kind of opened me up to be more understanding of all the aspects of the K-12, where I give a lot of pushback on some of it. I still give pushback. I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't, but I think I'm more open to it. And I've seen how our schools are working together on the local level for the most part. And if they all work together, whether it be choice, charter, or traditional public schools, if they all work together, it makes everybody better. It doesn't do anybody good to try to work against one another. So I think we're going in the right direction on K-12. I think we're seeing good results there. And I know as a parent, I'm very happy with the education my son's getting in our region. So.
Great. Thank you, Senator. Larry, I'm going to actually loop you in on the discussion here as well. So Larry, you've worn many hats through your career. You're a business guy first and foremost, but you've been passionate about K through 12 education, higher ed with your involvement here at Ivy Tech. Obviously, as Kevin and Adam mentioned, quite a few of the talent, education kind of metrics are really a critical part of the study. Share some of your observations from, kind of hearing the update, things that have you encouraged or worried about Indiana or our region and the direction we're going.
Thanks, Jeff. Obviously, I'm delighted with the outcome of the budget session. As a charter school, we obviously still with the increases we've got, we still get about 30% less than traditional public schools. And we'd like to see the legislature do some things to equalize the funding, because with the funding that charters get, we still do with disadvantaged kids, we still do have better outcomes than traditional public schools. But in looking at the study itself, one of the disturbing things that we've got happening or not happening in Indiana is the entrepreneurship. Indiana is lagging behind. There was a GPS study that was conducted or completed 2 or 3 months back, and the number of new firms in Indiana is decreasing. In fact, I think it may be even the lowest in the country as far as the formulation of new companies. And the most new positions in employment are created in a new company in the first 5 years of their existence. This is kind of accepted across the country as being pretty true. So that what happens is the fact that Indiana is not having as much entrepreneurial activity as other states is really a bad omen of what's coming up in the future. So one of the things that I'm starting to focus on and some of my associates is to increase entrepreneurship funding and not only funding, but obviously entrepreneurship education and exposure to kids in the K-12 system. We started the RISE program. This is the entrepreneurship program that we now have in St. Joe County and also in Elkhart County. And that's been very, very successful. And the RISE curriculum has been adopted by the Department of Education as the new curriculum for dual credit entrepreneurship programs in Indiana starting next year. It's optional this year, but starting next year. And I was just involved with Ivy Tech, and we've just created a brand new school of entrepreneurship and innovation at Ivy Tech. And we just passed it to the Ivy Tech State Board of Trustees. So I'm hoping that with the IEDC and some of their entities, we can get much more support for enhancing the entrepreneurship culture and education across the entire state. And entrepreneurship education would start actually in middle school and go through high school and then through Ivy Tech and obviously at the 4-year level. And so Elevate has done a great job at the 4-year level. We hope to do the same thing with Ivy Tech at the middle technician level, and we hope to do the same thing at the middle school and high school level. So we've come a long way with education, but we've still got all these, wherever we are in the totem pole, there's always several people ahead of us or above us. So we've just got to keep raising our standards and our aspirations to so that we don't get left behind. We've got a great state. We've got tremendous opportunity. We just got to keep punching ahead.
Thank you, Larry. We'll come back your way. Kevin or Adam, let me loop you into this conversation too. So Kevin, Larry made some great points about entrepreneurship. Certainly you've been around the business community for a long time. And my guess is you have members like me that are, the smallest one has 1 employee and the biggest one has probably thousands of employees. Talk a little bit about the entrepreneurial climate in Indiana, maybe some of the metrics in the report here related to that, and the things like Larry was saying that we could do better to encourage more entrepreneurship here.
Well, certainly we have room to grow, and our our rankings are not where we'd like them to be, and the rate of growth of both new company startups and growth in employees in those newer firms is not growing as fast as it is occurring in other states. So this, in our view, needs to be a key area of focus to sort of grow our own. Jim Schellinger, who just left the IEDC, he and his team did a great job of attracting new investments and new companies or expansions into our state. But we certainly could improve in going parallel to that and growing our own. And I think the kinds of initiatives like Larry is talking about would go a long way in that. And I know, Adam, this is kind of your area of responsibility at the chamber, so let you chime in as well.
Yeah, so I see it as sort of a twofold issue. The first being, what can we do to incent more business creation? I think the progress that's been made over the last 2 years in the General Assembly with respect to our venture capital investment tax credit, first making it transferable, and then this year increasing the total cap that's available, as well as the percentage that investors receive for making an investment in a younger company, is not only going to attract more investors, but it's also going to make it easier for someone to make that leap into entrepreneurship. And then I think the second issue is, what can we do to attract and retain talent in the state? And with talent, you're going to have more entrepreneurs and more entrepreneurial activity. Not to mention, if you're attracting more residents to the state, the economic impact that those new residents are going to have on the local community are really going to help younger businesses and younger firms continue to grow. And so I think it's what can we do to attract more entrepreneurship, make it easier to be an entrepreneur, but also attract and retain the talent that's going to support those entrepreneurs.
And I would add to that, Jeff, that lifting up the education attainment, post-secondary, whether it's full-blown degrees or certificates, credentials, et cetera, will generate more entrepreneurs as well. And so that's part of that overall adult workforce attainment equation.
Great, Kevin. I want to stay with you for a second because I want to think about I don't know if it's maybe next step. So think a little bit. The report card's out and it's identified places that we've done well and places that maybe there's opportunities for next. So what happens next? Are you sort of next, kind of working on your policy agenda, for the future, and then sitting down with the Senator Mischlers and his Godskis of the world and saying, hey, we're not doing well in here and we need to do anything? Just walk us through sort of how you react to these kind of report cards and what kind of steps you take to sort of help improve those outcomes.
Well, we've been doing report cards since our first economic visioning plan, which was rolled out in 2000. And we've been doing them every other year. Now we're into Indiana Vision 2025. And I appreciate the question because it gives me a chance to outline that, we share the report cards with legislators. We look at them ourselves and say, okay, where are the areas where we're not making adequate progress, and what policies can we pursue to do that? And so that becomes and really is our guiding star for our policy initiatives. Currently, as the name implies, we have 5 years left on the current Indiana Vision 2025 plan. But last summer, when we saw the tremendous upheaval of the pandemic, we began to say, you know what, there have been so many changes in the economy, in the workforce, et cetera, that it no longer makes sense to just say, okay, well, we've got a plan that runs for another 5 years. We're going to put our blinders on and, to use a basketball analogy, just run out the clock on our current plan. We easily and quickly decided now is the time to pivot, to develop a new plan. And we're doing it in 2 phases. One is, what can and should we be doing right now as a chamber and as a state? And there are some areas that we're diving into right away, such as learning loss in K-12 that's occurred because of the impact of the pandemic. We also have seen an acceleration of a trend that was already underway, which is automation. I saw a survey of manufacturers a few months ago, and there was an open-ended question that said, what are you going to do different going forward? And virtually every answer that was categorized from the respondents was automate, automate, automate. One gentleman and one business owner in particular said, I'm going to automate everything I can because robots don't catch the virus. They don't have to quarantine at home. They don't call in sick when they've been out and had too much to drink the night before. And if you keep them well oiled, you can run them 24/7 and not pay them benefits. This is, and Indiana was identified by another study as the state most vulnerable to automation, which makes sense because we're the most manufacturing intensive state in the country. So we're looking at that. We're looking at racial equity and how we help minority owned businesses get off the ground and cut through some of the racial inequality issues. So those are some of the immediate things that we're looking at. And I just had a conversation this morning about childcare, which is becoming an inhibitor to a lot of folks, particularly women, getting back into the workforce when kids were, sent home to learn virtually. And so we're doing that. Is what can we should be doing right now, and we'll focus on for the upcoming legislative session. And then we've decided it is time to develop a third Indiana, we're calling it Indiana Vision, Accelerated Indiana Vision 2025 Plus. There will be a 2030 or 2040 plan rather than, as I said, just run out the clock on the current plan. So there's a lot underway. We have a task force of chamber board members and other friends and allies from regional chambers, from Northwest Indiana Forum, from Central Indiana Corporate Partnership, and other organizations that are meeting monthly to guide us on both the immediate and between now and probably this time next year, develop a new economic visioning plan for Indiana.
Great. Senator Mishra, I want to come back your way, and because I want to kind of get in the head of a legislator here real quick. Every legislative session, I see it like you do. There are thousands of bills filed, and people think there's a policy legislative solution to everything. And obviously, you have to carefully consider those that are the top priority. So how much, how much can policy influence results here, and how much do we, the people in the communities or the business community or others, have to sort of move these things? My guess is you can't legislate a solution to everything. So just help me think through how you balance, that kind of thing.
First of all, I probably filed the fewest number of bills of any senator in the legislature, but I feel we have too many laws. And most of the time when we have a bill filed, there's already a law in place, and it's just not enforced. And they feel like filing a new bill is going to make a difference. Well, if you're not enforcing the law that currently exists, what's the point of doing another one? So again, I'll go back to what I say when it comes to this, though. We can help create a climate, but we don't do the footwork. We listen to the business owners, people like yourself, Kevin's group, and what can we do as a state, as legislators, to create an environment that businesses want to come to. And on his report card, or the Chamber's report card, you can see a lot of things that we've done. I think on there this year, Kevin, I think was the Ready grants, the $500 million we're putting out there for locals to kind of like a regional cities, but a little different, ongoing. You and
Quality of place initiatives. That's what.
What's that?
Quality of place types of initiatives.
Yeah, correct. And then one problem too is, Jeff, we've talked, there was never an ongoing revenue stream for, once we had regional cities, it was one and done. Money's gone and we're done. And we wanted to put something there to allow regions to have an ongoing revenue stream. And we talked about an income tax, economic development income tax. Well, we find out there is one there, but it's just so small, no one will use it. So I thought, I've talked to you, let's raise it. So we raise it and let's see if anybody uses it. Because then you can bond against things like that. So as we listen to you folks, I think we make positive changes to create that environment, but the local leadership has to actually pull the trigger. We can put these things out there, but the locals have to actually organize and figure out, put a plan together to utilize what we're putting out there. So I guess to some of it's more of a partnership. We can just create the environment. We don't go out and and run the businesses and things like that. We don't micromanage. We just create an environment for locals to be able to utilize with the businesses, attract talent, attract business. It was brought about the entrepreneurship. I think Mr. Garachoni said, that's a concern too. As an entrepreneur that's, purchased and started businesses in this state, it's concerning the numbers going down. Now, one thing we did, I thought would help with that was the $250 million we put aside. I think it was either in the 17 budget or the 19 budget for startups to get low interest loans from the state. Other states were doing it, so we've done that. And I don't really know. I haven't heard an update recently, but I'm not sure that's really being utilized to its fullest. So there's an example of something we're putting out there, but I don't think it's being utilized. So is it not being utilized because people don't know about it? Do we need to change the criteria? Is the criteria such that it's not user friendly? And those are the kind of things we need to know to see what changes we need to make to utilize what we've already put out there. So in a long way, I don't know if that makes sense to you, Jeff, or not, but.
No, that's great. I think that was exactly what I'm thinking. And I'm thinking, obviously, I think, Kevin and Adam both mentioned, like health, like smoking and obesity and such. And obviously, I think, some of these get hard because some of it's personal choice stuff that people make. And how do you, how do we legislate ourselves to better health? I think that's obviously complicated, but I think, Kevin, you've mentioned, several times on the health side, the cost, and I'll get it wrong, and maybe Kevin, you can correct me, that because I think you had suggested the amount above average that we pay for health insurance because of how unhealthy we are. So that's why this is a business issue. You might not look at obesity or smoking and think that's a traditional business issue, but it is because of what it costs us on the health insurance side.
Well, and to follow up on what Senator Mishler said earlier about comparing other states, our members who have facilities in multiple states regularly tell us that Indiana is the highest healthcare cost state, and it is a combination. One, there is more utilization, but if you look at the RAND study, at least with respect to hospitals, it indicates that study is based on the cost of a procedure. So it's not utilization, it's this procedure costs more in Indiana than it does in all but a handful of other states across the country. And you would think if we're having more of those procedures done because of our unhealthy status, that there might be a quantity discount or some efficiencies that come into play, but that's not the case. And I believe Senator Mishler is correct that we have not yet spent enough time at the legislature diving into this and trying to determine what can be done at that level from a public policy standpoint.
Great, thank you. It's interesting. A couple of takeaways from me as I was reviewing it. Adam, you mentioned out-migration. That's been top of mind for business and community leaders in our point for a long time. Part of our regional city's objective here in particular was to transform that negative out-migration into a positive in-migration. It's one of our 5 core goals here. We realized to help the state achieve their goals, we need to do our part in the region to get there. Senator Mishler it was terrific in regional cities in terms of helping bring that. We think those investments that have been made in recent years will really help us transform that. And obviously, we're anxious to see census information. We think that there's some good things, as you mentioned, Adam, being up here that hopefully transform that. And I think that's what's been interesting for us as a local community is to set some local goals based on kind of some of those state goals to help us get there. Larry, I think, would attest to maybe one thing that excited us both was sort of the technical improvements, the science and math, the kind of the education attainment that was happening in there. We realized our our economy is transforming and we need folks that have a different level of understanding than before. So several positive, things there as well to take away. Like every report card, I think some things to be excited about and some things that we should really focus on, but appreciate the chance to have that discussion here today. Kevin, let me come your way. Any final thoughts as we're wrapping up here as to how the business leaders who are watching today should use this, or how they should plan or engage in this process?
Thank you, Jeff. And again, for the opportunity and of course the strong partnership that we have with the South Bend Regional Chamber. We appreciate the opportunity to visit with you. The one thing I would emphasize is that there has been a significant upheaval in the economy and in the workforce because of the pandemic, and things are not going to be the same. I mentioned the automation. I think there are a lot of folks in hospitality, convention business, et cetera, that were displaced. And maybe the lemonade here is that that's been a wake-up call that they need to up their skills to have a better, more secure level of employment and a living wage job. And in fact, I was in a meeting this morning on vaccinations, and the head of the Restaurant and Hospitality Association said that many of their employees who were laid off last year have moved on to other industries, manufacturing, construction, et cetera. And so the restaurants, the hotels, et cetera, are having a hard time ramping back up. And so we have a population challenge as well, both overall that we need to attract more people to Indiana, and a challenge in terms of the shifts that are going on within our state. In recent years, our overall state population has gone up slightly, but it's gone down in almost 2/3 of the counties, including some in your region, as Adam slide put out. So we need to first be aware of that, and then second, discuss and be thoughtful about, quote, what are we going to do about it? But all that said, I believe that Indiana, both the business community and the good work of the General Assembly this session, has positioned Indiana to be a leader coming out of the pandemic and not a lagger. We're pleased to have the opportunity to work with Senator Mishler and his colleagues, and I'm not just blowing smoke up his skirt. Genuinely believe what I said earlier, that there were some important strategic decisions made and investments made with this windfall of money that landed in the state's lap there near the end of the legislative session.
Great, thank you, Kevin. And go ahead, Larry.
Yeah, Jeff, I just want to say that candidly, I've lived in Indiana my whole life, and at times I've been very unhappy with the progress we've made, especially in our St. Joe County. But in the last 8 or 9 years, we've come a long way. And with the last legislative session that has been so successful, and the work of the chamber, I really think we're all marching down the field together. I see a tremendous amount of teamwork and enthusiasm, and I have a great deal of optimism that the next few years are going to be very positive for the state of Indiana and for the citizens.
Thank you, Larry, for sharing that. And I appreciate that. Larry and I and many are involved in the READY initiative, thanks to the General Assembly. And in fact, a big kickoff meeting next week related to that here, our regional partnership and us all working together on that. So we're grateful for that. Senator Mishler, I'm going to come your way and give you a final word. Any final words that you want to leave our audience with today?
No, I will say, when you talked about the population shifts, it made me think, as being one from the rural community, a town of 4,000 people, the big concern I have is the rural populations are really declining. Mm-hmm. And so while some are fearful of this regionalism, being from a small town, I think that's the importance of the regionalism, because if it wasn't for this collaboration of the region with these declining populations in the rural communities, I'm afraid it would almost wipe out our rural communities.
Wow.
And that's a huge, they're all going to the suburban areas. They think they can get better education and things like that. And I don't think that's true. If you work as a region and you utilize all your resources in that region, the small rural communities can succeed just like the larger communities within that region. So I think you guys have done a great job on our region. Being from the small town, you sometimes feel like you're going to get cut out if you're in a region, but I don't feel cut out. I feel like, you know, our small communities have been very involved with you and Jeff and your folks. I thank you guys for that, and the folks that have run the regional develop RDA. You guys have done a great job. So I guess I'm feeling very optimistic. Like Larry said, you know, St. Joe County years ago probably wasn't going the right direction, and now you talk about St. Joe County at the State House, people show a different kind of respect that they didn't used to show. When I said I live just outside of South Bend one time, they're like, why do you say that? You should say you live close to Warsaw or something. You know, I mean, like, you just didn't ever want to mention St. Joe County. It was, and now it's like Warsaw, Plymouth, South Bend, Elkhart, you know, anytime you mention, you know, Bremen, Bourbon, anything in our region, it now has a different kind of respect, I think. And I think it's taken a long time to get there, but I think we're on the right track, and we're all collaborating. And I think Larry said it best, we're all marching together. And I think that's the big difference, Jeff, between now and 10, 12 years ago, is the collaboration.
Great. Thank you, Senator. And we're going to wrap it at that. I want to thank first our panelists for joining us today, Kevin Brinegar and Adam Berry from the Indiana Chamber, Senator Mishler and Senator Nisgodsky, and Larry Garatoni from the Garatoni Smith Family Foundation. Really appreciate you all being with us today. We obviously only scratched the surface of a lot of these topics today, and we encourage you to stay involved in the Indiana Vision 2025 plan. Reach out to Kevin and his team at the Chamber. Reach out to your local chamber. I think we're all partners in this effort, and we're happy to work close with everybody. Thank you, Kevin, though, for your leadership on this effort, and everybody for joining us today. We'll see you again fairly soon. Thanks.
Thank you all. Thank you.